23rd of January 1945, 4:17 in the morning. Forward operating base, Sector 9, Belgian Ardennes, 14 kilometers northeast of Malmedy. Temperature, -18 degrees Celsius. Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Weak, irregular, knuckles dragging across frozen wood. He opened the bunker door, Walter P-38 drawn, expecting a wounded animal or perhaps a delirious civilian. What collapsed at his feet was neither. Feldwebel Ernst Becker, missing in action since the 4th of January, 19 days. His left boot was gone, the foot visible through shredded wool sock, swollen to twice its normal size, flesh mottled black and purple with advanced frostbite. 3 fingers on his right hand had frozen solid, the tips black as charcoal. A shrapnel wound in his lower abdomen, crudely bandaged with strips of what appeared to be parachute silk, had bled through completely. The fabric was stiff with dried blood, crusted and dark. But Becker's left hand somehow remained functional, and in it he clutched a standard Wehrmacht field envelope, military issue. Wax seal unbroken. His lips, cracked and bleeding, moved. Hartmann knelt close, ear near Becker's mouth. 612 kilometers. Then nothing. Eyes rolled back. Unconscious. Hartmann lifted the envelope carefully. Standard weight. No unusual markings. Addressed to Oberst Friedrich Steiner, commanding officer of Kampfgruppe Hartmann, FIRS. TSS Panzer Division. Sender, Reconnaissance Unit Falk, attached to Army Group B Intelligence Section. What Hartmann would read in the next 60 seconds would shatter every assumption about the offensive, and it would explain why a man weighing perhaps 50 kilograms, with gangrenous frostbite, a septic abdominal wound, and no supplies, would walk 612 kilometers through enemy-held territory in the middle of winter. The seal broke with a soft crack. To understand what the T envelope contained and why it demanded such sacrifice, we must return to 19 days earlier, 4th of January, 1945. The German winter offensive, launched 16 days prior on the 16th of December 1944, had achieved initial surprise. Spearheads had driven deep into American lines. Towns fell. Prisoners were taken by the thousands. Radio broadcasts spoke of momentum, of breakthrough, of the Americans reeling backward in confusion. But Oberkommando West, the German High Command for the Western Front, had made calculations before launching the offensive. Calculations based on intelligence estimates. American strength in the Ardennes sector, approximately 80,000 men, 300 tanks, minimal air support due to winter weather. German strength committed, 200,000 men, 1,000 tanks, 2,000 artillery pieces. Ratio, better than 2-to-1 in infantry, better than 3-to-1 in armor. General der Panzertruppen H. Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding the 47th Panzer Corps, had reviewed these figures personally. He told his staff officers on the 2nd of December, 1944, "Gentlemen, the Americans have stripped this sector to reinforce their drive toward the Rhine. They have left students and old men to hold a front of 130 kilometers. We will brush them aside like dust." General Major Otto Remmer, commanding the Führerbegleiter Brigade, expressed similar confidence. Intelligence confirms minimal resistance. Our panzers will reach the Meuse River in 72 hours. Fuel depots have been positioned. Victory is a matter of execution, not doubt. The offensive began at 5:30 in the morning, 16th of December. Artillery struck American positions with devastating effect. Panzer columns rolled forward. Initial reports seemed to confirm every prediction. Towns surrendered. American units retreated in disorder. But by the 21st of December, 5D, as into the offensive, strange reports began filtering back. Reports that didn't match the intelligence estimates. Reports of American reinforcements arriving in numbers that seemed impossible. Reports of resistance stiffening in ways that contradicted the assessment of a thinly held sector defended by reserve units. On the 28th of December, Oberst Friedrich Steiner, commanding Kampfgruppe Hartmann operating on the northern shoulder of the Bulge, received an order from Army Group B, Tau, Headquarters, a reconnaissance unit, designation Falk, consisting of 12 men led by Feldwebel Ernst Becker, would be inserted 20 kilometers behind American lines. Mission: confirm actual American troop dispositions. Equipment: 1 Kübelwagen light vehicle, 1 radio transmitter, small arms, 5 days rations. Becker and his men departed at dusk on the 2nd of January, 1945. Radio contact was maintained for 18 hours. Then silence. Complete. Total. No emergency transomy. Mission: no distress signal. Nothing. Standard procedure: presume unit lost, write it off, move on. But on the morning of January 23rd, Ernst Becker returned, alone, on foot, having walked 612 kilometers, carrying an envelope. Lieutenant Hartmann, hands shaking slightly in the cold bunker, unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. Standard military communication form. Becker's handwriting, surprisingly steady given the circumstances. Dated 5th of January, 1945. Grid coordinates, and then numbers, columns of numbers, unit designations, strength estimates. Hartmann read it once, blinked, read it again. His breathing changed, faster, shallower. He stood moving quickly now, crossing the bunker to wake Hauptmann Wolfgang Brandt, the battalion intelligence officer. Sir, you need to see this immediately." Brandt took the paper, eyes adjusting to the dim light of a single kerosene lamp. He scanned the first few lines. His face went very still. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. "Where did you get this?" "Feldwebel Becker, sir. Reconnaissance Unit Falk." He walked back, just arrived. "Walked back from where?" "Behind American lines, sir. The mission from the 2nd of January. Brandt looked at the paper again. "This cannot be correct. Sir, Becker walked 600 kilometers to deliver it. Get me Oberst Steiner, now." 20 minutes later, 6 officers crowded into the bunker. Oberst Steiner read the document in silence. His jaw tightened. He looked at Becker, still unconscious on a stretcher, being examined by the battalion medical officer. "Is he going to survive?" "Perhaps, sir. If we evacuate him to a field hospital within 6 hours and amputate the foot and fingers immediately." "Can he be questioned?" "Not for at least 12 hours, sir. He's lost too much blood. Body temperature is 34 degrees. He's in severe shock." Steiner turned back to the paper. "Then we validate the re-S ourselves. Brandt, cross-reference these unit designations with our intelligence database. Every single one. I want confirmation or contradiction within 2 hours." Hauptmann Brandt set to work with 3 junior officers, pulling filed reports, maps, prisoner interrogation transcripts, radio intercepts. The numbers Becker had written were staggering. If accurate, they represented a fundamental miscalculation, not a small error, not a modest underestimation, a catastrophic failure of intelligence. NC on a scale that defied comprehension. By dawn, Brandt had his first confirmation. A prisoner interrogation report from the 19th of December, filed by a different unit 60 kilometers south, mentioned a unit designation that matched Becker's list. 28th Infantry Division, American. Intelligence estimate, 6,000 men, significantly under strength, in reserve status. Prisoner's statement, "We were at full combat strength, 14,000 men. We just finished training CI de Baikal." Second confirmation came from radio intercepts. American communications, partially decoded, referenced unit movements that matched Becker's coordinates and designations. Units that German intelligence had assessed as being 200 kilometers away, still in France, not yet committed to combat. Third confirmation, reconnaissance photographs taken on the 20th of December by one of the last Luftwaffe sorties before weather completely grounded German air operations. Photographs that had been filed but not fully analyzed due to the chaos of the offensive. Brandt pulled them from archives, studied them under magnification, vehicle concentrations, bivouac areas, artillery positions, all matching Becker's reported locations. By 8 in the morning, Brandt returned to Steiner's command post. His face was gray. "Sir, I have validated 17 of the 22 unit identifications Becker reported. The remaining 5 I cannot confirm or deny due to insufficient data." but of tea. Hose 17. He paused. Sir, Becker is correct. Every designation, every location, every strength estimate. Steiner placed both hands flat on the map table. Give me the summary. Brandt opened his notes. His voice was mechanical, professional. The only way to deliver information like this? Intelligence estimate prior to offensive. American forces in the Ardennes sector, 83,000 men, 240 tanks, minimal artillery. Becker's reconnaissance indicates actual. American forces, 260,000 men, 1,300 tanks, full divisional artillery support. Ratio of error, more than 3-to-1. Silence in the command post. 4 officers present. No one spoke. The only sound was wind against the bunker's ventilation shaft, a low moan. Steiner's voice, when it came, was quiet. Repeat the tank numbers. Intelligence estimate, 240 tanks. Actual, per Becker's count, and our validation, 1,300. Dread tanks. Ratio, 5.4-to-1. And this information is confirmed. 17 independent data points confirm it, sir. Prisoner statements, radio intercepts, photographic evidence. Becker didn't guess. He counted. And he was right. Another officer, Major Wilhelm Kessler, spoke. Then the offensive was predicated on false assumptions from the beginning. Brandt nodded slowly. Yes, sir. We attacked believing we had overwhelming superiority. 2-to-1 in infantry, 3-to-1 in armor. In reality, we attacked outnumbered. They had more men, more tanks, more artillery. We only succeeded initially because we achieved surprise, because weather grounded their air force, and because they didn't expect us to be foolish enough to attack into that strength. Oberleutnant Hans Fischer, the artillery liaison, did quick calculations on paper. If these numbers are accurate, then every fuel allocation, every ammunition reserve, every replacement schedule, all of it was calculated for a completely different battle. We don't have enough supplies to fight the force that's actually there. Steiner picked up Becker's report, reading it again as if hoping the numbers might change. They didn't. How did our intelligence fail so completely? Brandt had clearly anticipated the question. Sir, I've reviewed our source data. Most intelligence came from aerial reconnaissance conducted in November, before significant American reinforcements arrived. We assessed static position, and extrapolated strength. We didn't account for their ability to rapidly redeploy entire divisions by truck and rail. They moved 6 divisions into the sector between the 5th and 15th of December. We never detected it because weather grounded our reconnaissance aircraft during that window. And prisoner interrogations? We interviewed enlisted men from what we assumed were representative units. But we captured men from precisely the understrength divisions we expected to find. The full-strength divisions remained out of contact until after the offensive began. Confirmation bias, sir. We found what we expected to find and stopped looking. Major Kessler stood, pacing the confined space. This explains everything. Why their resistance stiffened so quickly. Why towns we expected to take in hours held for days. Why their counterattacks came with strength we couldn't match. They weren't desperate defenders. They were the larger force. Steiner looked again at Becker, still unconscious. And this man walked 612 kilometers to tell us. The medical officer, Stabsarzt Peter Weiss, who had been listening in silence, spoke. Sir, may I add something? I examined Feldwebel Becker thoroughly. The frostbite on his left foot is at least 12 days old, probably more. The wound in his abdomen is infected, possibly septic. He hasn't eaten more than minimum calories in weeks. He's dehydrated despite traveling through snow. He should be dead. Medically, he could not have made it past 200 kilometers. The fact that he reached us is... He struggled for the word. Impossible. But he did. Yes, sir. He did. Steiner made his decision. Brandt, encrypt this information and transmit it to Army Group B headquarters immediately. Priority Alpha. Kessler, prepare an analysis of our current tactical position given these revised strength estimates. I want it in 1 hour. Fischer, calculate ammunition expenditure rates if we're facing the forces. Becker identified. Everyone else, operational security. No one speaks of this outside this room until I authorize it." The meeting dispersed. Men moved quickly to their tasks, but their faces carried a weight that hadn't been there an hour before. The weight of understanding. But Becker's report contained more than unit identifications and strength estimates. On the reverse side of the paper, he had written something else. A paragraph, an observation. Hauptmann Brandt noticed it during his val. Idation work, but in the urgency of confirming the numerical data, he hadn't read it carefully. Now, with other officers dispatched to their duties, he read it fully. The words were simple, direct, the writing of a man with limited time. During infiltration, we observed American supply operations, fuel trucks, ammunition convoys, food supplies. Volume exceeds anything we've seen. At grid reference 478231, we counted 83 fuel trucks in a single depot. At grid reference 482244, ammunition stockpile covering approximately 4 hectares. At grid 491253, field kitchen feeding estimated 2,000 men per meal, 3 meals per day. They are not rationing. They are not conserving. They are expending as if supply is unlimited. We are fighting an enemy that has more of everything. Not just more men, more bullets, more fuel, more food, more replacement parts, more of everything. This is what I needed you to know. This is why I walked. Brandt read it 3 times. Then he walked outside, into the snow, into the wind, and stood there for 5 minutes. Other soldiers, moving between positions, saw him but didn't approach. His posture communicated something that made men keep their distance. When he returned inside, he found Steiner. "Sir, there's an addendum to Becker's report. You need to read it." Steiner read the paragraph. His expression didn't change. When he finished, he folded the paper carefully. Ian placed it in his map case. "This confirms what we've suspected. The material disparity isn't just tactical, it's strategic, systemic." "Yes, sir." "And there's no solution." "No, sir." That afternoon, Ernst Becker regained consciousness. Stabsarzt Weiss had administered morphine, but even through the drug's haze, Becker was lucid enough to answer questions. Steiner sat beside the stretcher, speaking quietly. "Feldwebel Becker, you did well. Your information reached us. We've validated it. Now I need to understand how you survived the journey." Becker's voice was hoarse, barely audible. "Radio failed second day, sir. Ambushed. Lost the Kubelwagen. Lost the radio. Lost 11 men. Only I made it out. Had the report already written. Knew it had to reach you. You were behind American lines. How did you navigate back?" "Compass and stars, sir. Moved at night. Hid during day. Stole food when I could. Ate snow for water. The wound happened 4th day. Stepped on unexploded ordi. Nance. Small fragmentation. Kept pressure on it. Kept moving. The frostbite. Lost the boot crossing a stream. 8th day. Water was colder than I expected. Foot was wet. Couldn't dry it. Kept moving. 612 kilometers. 19 days. That's an average of 32 kilometers per day. Impossible for an uninjured man in winter. How did you do it injured?" Becker closed his eyes. "Sir, I saw what I saw. I counted what I counted. Knew if you didn't know, we'd keep fighting. Blind. Keep losing men for nothing. Had to tell you. That's all. Just had to tell you." Steiner nodded slowly. "You'll be evacuated to a field hospital within the hour. They'll do what they can for the foot and hand. Doesn't matter, sir. The message arrived. That's what matters." After Steiner left, one of the medical orderlies, Sanitätsgefreiter Anton Richter, stayed with Becker while preparing him for evacuation. Years later, in testimony given during post-war interviews conducted in 1953, Richter would recall the conversation. "I asked Feldwebel Becker if he ever considered giving up during the march. He looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. He said, 'Give up and let them keep dying for a lie?' I asked what he meant. He said, 'They told us we were winning, that we had superior numbers, that the Americans were weak. I saw the truth. Mountains of supplies, thousands of tanks, endless men. If I didn't get back, our men would keep attacking, keep dying, believing they just needed to fight harder. But the truth is, we were already beaten before we started. Someone had to tell them, so I walked. The information Becker delivered spread through the chain of command like a slow-acting poison. Not quickly, not dramatically, but inexorably. Each level of command received it, validated it, and had to confront what it meant. At division level, General Major Werner Ostendorf, commanding Das Reich Division, received the intelligence summary on the evening of January 23rd. He called his staff together and presented the numbers. One of his officers, Obersturmbannführer Karl Ulrich, commanding a Panzer Grenadier regiment, wrote in his personal diary, later captured and archived. January 23, 1945. Received intelligence update. American forces 3 times stronger than estimated. We've been advancing into a trap. Every kilometer forward stretched our supply lines while they compressed theirs. Every village we took cost us tanks and men we couldn't replace while they rotated fresh divisions into the line. The offensive didn't fail because we fought poorly. It failed because we never had the strength to succeed. Someone knew this. Someone miscalculated, and thousands died for it. At corps level, General der Panzertruppen Heinrich von Lüttwitz, the same officer who had expressed such confidence in December, now faced the mathematics of reality. His 47th Panzer Corps had begun the offensive with TO 137 operational tanks. By January 23rd, he had 63. Losses, 174 tanks. Intelligence had promised minimal armor opposition. Instead, his units had faced coordinated American tank and tank destroyer battalions with numerical superiority at nearly every engagement. In a radio communication to Army Group B headquarters, intercepted and recorded by Allied Signals Intelligence and later published in military archives, von Lüttwitz state, D. Request clarification on force estimates. Our casualties exceed projections by factor of 4. If intelligence regarding enemy strength was inaccurate, continued offensive operations are tactically unsound. Recommend immediate defensive posture to preserve remaining combat power. At Army Group level, General Feldmarschall Walter Model, commanding Army Group B, faced the most difficult position. He had advocated for the offensive. He had assured Hitler that success was achievable, and now he held intelligence indicating the operation had been doomed from inception. On January 25, 1945, Model met with his senior staff officers. No official transcript exists, but multiple attendees later provided consistent accounts. Model placed the intelligence summary on the conference table and asked a single question. If we had known these numbers in November, would we have recommended this offensive? Silence. Then General Lieutenant Karl Wagener, Army Group B Chief of Staff, answered, "No, Herr Feldmarschall. Not with these force ratios, not with our fuel situation, not with our industrial capacity." Model nodded. Then we sent 200,000 men into an operation that was mathematically unwinnable. And we did so because our intelligence was wrong, not slightly wrong, catastrophically wrong. Another officer, General Major Rudolf von Gersdorf, Chief of Intelligence for Army Group B, spoke. "Sir, I must state for the record that our estimates were based on the best available data at the time. Aerial reconnaissance, prisoner interrogations, radio intercepts all pointed to a thinly held sector. And yet a single reconnaissance team, 12 men led by a Feldwebel, produced accurate data that contradicted all of it. How? They went to the actual locations, sir. They counted with their eyes. They observed with their senses. They didn't rely on estimates or projections. They saw the truth." Model's response, recorded by multiple witnesses, was as devastating. "Then perhaps we should have sent 12 men to look before we sent 200,000 men to die." The psychological impact of Becker's information rippled downward through the ranks. At regimental level, at battalion level, at company level, officers who had driven their men forward with promises of breakthrough and victory now had to confront a different reality. They had been attacking uphill, numerically inferior, supplied inadequately from the beginning. The courage of air soldiers hadn't been lacking. The determination hadn't been insufficient. The mathematics had been wrong. Lieutenant Stefan Vogel, commanding a Panzer Grenadier Company in the 9th SS Panzer Division, wrote in a letter to his wife, intercepted by postal censorship and never delivered but preserved in military archives. Dearest Maria, we've learned that the intelligence we received before the offensive was incorrect. The Americans weren't weak. They weren't unprepared. They were stronger than us. We attacked them anyway. Every man I've lost, every friend I've buried, died fighting an enemy we couldn't defeat. Not because they didn't fight hard enough, because we never had the numbers to win. Someone lied to us, or someone was lied to. Either way, they're dead. 42 men from my company, dead for a mistake. The statistical reality once acknowledged was crushing. Prior to the offensive, German intelligence had estimated they would face approximately 240 Amiri Icon tanks in the Ardennes sector. Becker's reconnaissance, validated by subsequent analysis, confirmed actual American armor strength at 1,300 tanks. Disparity, 5.4 to 1. But more devastating was the context. German fuel allocations for the offensive had been calculated to support operations against 240 enemy tanks. The fuel consumption required to engage 1,300 tanks was correspondingly higher. Tanks moving faster burned more fuel. Tanks maneuvering in combat burned more fuel. Tanks fighting defensive actions against superior numbers burned more fuel attempting to disengage. By the third week of January, fuel shortages had become critical, not because supply chains had failed, but because consumption exceeded planning by a factor matching the intelligence error. The war diary of the 2nd Panzer Division, recovered post-war, contained the following entry for January 26th. Fuel status, 12% of operational requirement. Immobilized, 73 tanks. Cause, empty fuel tanks. Ammunition status, adequate. Personnel status, adequate. Morale, deteriorating. Men ask why tanks sit idle. Cannot explain that we planned for a different battle. On the American side, the impact of Becker's journey had an inverse effect, though they wouldn't learn of it until after the war. American intelligence officers, analyzing captured German communications and prisoner interrogations in late January and early February, began to piece together the extent of German miscalculation. Colonel Benjamin Dixon, intelligence officer for 1st U.S. Army, noted in his assessment dated February 2, 1945, interrogation of captured German officers indicates they believed our forces in the Ardennes significantly weaker than actual strength. They appear to have attacked based on faulty estimates. Their surprise at our resistance now makes sense. They expected to brush us aside. Instead, I found prepared divisions at full strength. The irony was noted by multiple American observers. Technical Sergeant Robert Morrison, assigned to interrogate a captured German major from the 12th SS Panzer Division, recorded this exchange in his report dated February 8, 1945. Prisoner was asked why German forces continued attacking even after initial momentum was lost. Prisoner responded, "We didn't know we were losing. Intelligence told us you were defeated, retreating. That we just needed to push harder. We didn't learn the truth until too late. One of our reconnaissance teams finally sent accurate information, but by then we'd already lost." What Sergeant Morrison didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the reconnaissance team referenced was Becker's unit, and that the information had arrived carried by a man who had walked 612 kilometers to deliver it. The final accounting of the Ardennes offensive, compiled in the months and years after the war, revealed the cost of the intelligence failure. German casualties, approximately 100,000 men killed, wounded, or missing. Tank losses, approximately 600. The offensive had consumed Germany's last strategic reserve. Divisions shattered in the Ardennes couldn't be reconstituted. Territory gained was minimal and quickly lost. The Meuse River, the offensive's objective, was never reached. But beyond the statistics lay a more profound cost. The realization, spread nung through the German military in January and February of 1945, that they had been sent into battle based on false assumptions. That courage and determination couldn't overcome mathematical reality. That someone, somewhere in the intelligence apparatus, had miscalculated so severely that tens of thousands had died for it. Years later, in interviews conducted during the 1960s for historical research projects, survivors of the offensive would return again and again to at moment of realization, the moment they learned the truth. Oberst Friedrich Steiner, interviewed in 1967, stated, "When I read Becker's report, I felt something break inside. Not fear, not anger, something colder, understanding. We'd been advancing for weeks, fighting hard, losing men, believing we were on the edge of breakthrough. And in one moment, I knew it had all been for nothing. Not because my soldiers hadn't fought well, but because someone had sent us to fight a battle. We couldn't win." Hauptmann Wolfgang Brandt, interviewed in 1969, said, "I spent 2 hours validating Becker's numbers. Every data point I checked confirmed what he'd written, and with each confirmation, I felt the weight grow heavier, because I realized that if one Feldwebel with 11 men could gather accurate intelligence in 48 hours, how had our entire intelligence apparatus failed so completely for months? The answer is, we saw what we wanted to see. We estimated what we hoped to find. And men died for our assumptions." But perhaps the most devastating testimony came from Sanitätsgefreiter Anton Richter, the medic who had prepared Becker for evacuation. In an interview conducted in 1971, Richter recalled, "I've thought about Feldwebel Becker many times over the years, about what drove him to walk 600 kilometers with those injuries. He could have surrendered, could have hidden, could have died quietly in some Belgian forest, and no, one would have blamed him, but he didn't. He walked, because he'd seen the truth and he believed someone needed to know it. That one man's determination to tell the truth did more for Germany than all our propaganda, because the truth, even when it's terrible, is better than dying for a lie." Ernst Becker survived. Barely. The field hospital amputated his left foot below the ankle and removed 3 fingers from his right hand. Infection from the abdominal wound required 6 weeks of hospitalization. He was evacuated to Germany in early March 1945 and spent the remainder of the war recovering in a hospital in Bavaria. He survived the war's end, survived the post-war period, and lived until 1983. In 1976, Becker was interviewed by researchers compiling an oral history of the Ardennes offensive. He was asked what he remembered most about the 600-kilometer journey. His answer was recorded. "I remember being cold. So cold, my throat. HTS moved slowly, like frozen gears grinding. I remember being hungry, eating handfuls of snow to fill my stomach. I remember the pain from the wound, constant, never stopping. But more than any of that, I remember thinking, someone has to know. Someone has to understand what we're facing. Because if they don't know, they'll keep sending men to die. They'll keep attacking, believing we have the advantage. And we don't. We never did. That thought kept me moving. 1 kilometer, then another, then another. 612 times. Just 1 more kilometer." He was asked if he considered it worth it. The walk, the injuries, the permanent disabilities. The message arrived. They knew the truth. That's all that mattered. The envelope Becker carried, the single sheet of paper with his handwritten intelligence report, was never archived. It passed through official channels, was read by dozens of officers, and then disappeared into the chaos of war's end. No original copy survives. What remains are the references to it in war diaries, communications logs, intelligence summaries, and personal testimonies. Ghost evidence of a document that changed everything for those who read it, but left no physical trace. Decades later, in 1994, a memorial was erected near Malmedy, Belgium, at the approximate location where Becker arrived at the bunker entrance on January 23, 1945. The memorial is small, modest, a stone marker with a bronze plaque. The inscription reads, "In memory of Feldwebel Ernst Becker and Reconnaissance Unit Falk, who walked 612 kilometers to deliver truth. January 1945. Veterans from both sides have visited the memorial. American soldiers who fought in the Ardennes, German survivors of the offensive. On several occasions, they've met there by chance, former enemies, now old men, standing together in silence. In 2003, during one such encounter, an American veteran, Technical Sergeant James Patterson, retired, met a German veteran, Lieutenant Stefan Vogel, retired. They discovered they had fought in the same sector during the same period. Patterson had commanded a tank destroyer unit. Vogel had commanded a Panzer Grenadier company. They had likely exchanged fire, though neither could confirm it. They stood together at the memorial. Patterson read the inscription aloud, then asked, "Did it make a difference?" The information he brought back? Vogel was silent. For a long moment, then, "It didn't change the outcome. We'd already lost by the time he arrived. But it changed understanding. Men stopped believing they'd failed, started understanding they'd been given an impossible task. That's worth something. Maybe worth 612 kilometers. Patterson nodded. He did his duty. Under impossible circumstances. That's all any soldier can do. Yes, that's all. They remained at the memorial for another 10 minutes, not speaking, just standing. Two old men who'd tried to kill each other 60 years before, united now in understanding that war is often decided not by courage, but by mathematics, not by determination, but by resources, not by will, but by cold, hard numbers that don't care about bravery. The lesson of Ernst Becker's 612-kilometer walk isn't about heroism, though it was heroic. It isn't about endurance, though it required extraordinary endurance. The lesson is simpler, starker, more timeless. Truth matters. Accurate information matters. Reality doesn't negotiate with hope or propaganda or wishful thinking. You can send 200,000 men to attack with courage and determination and perfect tactics. But if you've miscalculated the enemy's strength by a factor of 3, they will die. Not because they weren't brave enough, because arithmetic doesn't yield to bravery. One man, wounded, freezing, starving, walked 612 kilometers to deliver arithmetic, numbers that predicted comfortable assumptions, data that destroyed confident plans, intelligence that revealed a fundamental truth. They were already beaten, had been from the start, were dying for a miscalculation. And in the end, that truth was worth more than all the propaganda, all the speeches, all the exhortations to fight harder, because soldiers will fight, will endure, will sacrifice, but they deserve to fight for something real, something possible, something more than a command structure's failure. He'd account accurately. Ernst Becker understood that. He walked 612 kilometers to make sure someone else understood it too. He lost a foot, lost 3 fingers, nearly lost his life. And 40 years later, standing at his memorial, when asked if it was worth it, his answer remained unchanged. The message arrived. They knew the truth. That's all that mattered. That remains the lesson. Truth delivered at terrible cost is still better than comfort bought with lies. Even when the truth is devastating, especially then.